this profile has been set up, any new user will be initially met with a screen that will request some further details from them, specifically the categories of grants that they're interested in. Following that process, the search and the newsletter, as well as the emails, if they choose to receive them, will be sent to them and will cover only grants that apply to their profile. Their profile can be changed at any time, and the default search functionality can be changed at any time so that they can widen their searches or limit their searches or search for any very specific grants in any way, shape or form. So what they'll see first is a search box. They'll see any favourite grants that they may starred, and you'll see what we call the favourite process later on. And their expiry dates for their subscription, as well as a button to view their most recent newsletter. So we'll just do a quick search for community development, and what you'll see is quite a few grants come up under my profile, which is pre-populated, and you'll see the categories that the user will choose here, as well as some of the eligibility requirements. So in this case, I'm looking for grants for individuals, for unincorporated groups, and for not-for-profits. And of course, there are a few categories that are applicable to my search, or my profile, I should say, and they are community services and development, multicultural, social enterprise, and sport and recreation. And so you can see there are quite a few grants available, and there are a few pages of grants, in fact, available. And you can scroll through the different types of grants using the pagination function here. To star a grant, you can either star it there, and basically that favorites it so that it will appear on your home screen, and you can keep an eye on any grants that you may be interested in that are coming up in the shorter term, or that you'd like to be informed of when they're available. Now, if I go through to the grant itself, you'll see a brief outline of what the grant is. So in this case, it's a council grant in the Ipswich City Council. The location the grant covers, the grant number, which isn't terribly useful from the point of view of a general user, but can be useful in terms of being a reference, and the primary category of that grant. It also mentions the eligibility. In this case, it's for not-for-profit organisations, and that the grant is ongoing, as well as the amounts and the total pool, which in this case is undisclosed. The council obviously hasn't provided the total pool of funding that they're offering in this round. So what you'll find with a lot of grants is that the round will actually provide information on the closing dates, opening and the closing dates. Following that initial outline, you've got further information on the grant. So you've got the general purpose of the grant, the overview, which provides more relevant information, the priorities, so that what the priorities of the grant provider are. In this instance, they're looking at building the capacity of families, celebrating families and that sort of thing. The limitations of the grant, which can be important if you're looking at applying. Sometimes if the limitations are too specific, you may decide to move on to another grant that may have a higher chance for a success rate. Following that general information, you've got links to application forms, guidelines, and any other relevant information, including an online form via our Smarty Grant system. In this case, Ipswich uses our Smarty Grant system to accept applications online. After the links, the relevant links, you've also got contact details to contact the grant provider. I should point out that the online applications aren't necessarily available to all grant providers, or available through all grant providers. We offer this service to certain subscribers of Smarty Grants, but given that it's the largest online application software in Australia, what you'll find is increasingly a lot of the grant providers are using this. Now, you can obviously print the page if you'd like to view a printable version of it, and you can also, from this page, add it to your favorites, and of course go back to the search results if you'd like to continue searching. That's pretty much it in terms of what your average day-to-day user may see. There is some functionality in terms of widening the searches, so you can get rid of some of these categories. You can change some of the keywords and widen those searches, and so you'll see that the results can change. Sometimes they'll change in such a way to reduce the number of grants, and that's because the system actually has some intelligence built in. But you can also exclude grants that require DGR status, and that may be useful for quite a few organisations, and that will of course widen the number of grants that are available. It's updated regularly by our grants team. They're essentially full-time workers that do, and among other things, that update this database. They also produce the newsletter every month and send that out every month, and also just keep an eye on any new grants that come out and update the system with those as well. What you'll see under my account and my settings, that firstly they can change their interest settings, so they can, for instance, expand them in case they'd like to, for whatever reason, view local government grants. They can expand the categories that they may be interested in. Once they save those details, they can also choose some local government areas that they're interested in, and of course states and territories as well. And so those are updated. They can view their most recent newsletter. They can control the alerts, and these are the email alerts. So you'll see that they can choose never. They can choose a daily alert, and that only gets sent out if there are any grants that meet their profile or their criteria. Or they can choose weekly alerts, in which case they get a listing of what's come out or what's changed in the previous week. And they can just choose to receive general news as well. If we go back to the newsletter, I can view the most recent newsletter, and I'll open that up. And if I scroll down a little bit, what you'll see is a listing of the grants. You'll see the page number that they're on. So if you'd like to print it out, you can still find them, but you can also link straight through to them. And the listing is very similar to what they'd see online on the database. There's an outline of the grant, there's the general purpose, an overview for further information. There's the limitations, of course, and of course the links and contact details for each and every grant. And in this case, because I've got about 90, well, in fact, 120 odd pages of grant information. This is a full listing of the grants that's available at this given moment. The email alerts are only for grants that have changed or been updated, or their closing dates have been recently updated. So effectively they get a more limited number of grants in the email alerts than they do in the newsletter. But every subscriber gets the newsletter. Only people who are interested in getting the most recent updates would get the alerts, the email alerts. We have a number of grants help sheets. They can be quite useful, and they go through the process of applying for grants. There are some basics on fundraising which can be useful for anyone who's beginning the process. So this is what we call the Grant Seekers template, and the idea behind it is to allow anyone applying for grants to have all of the relevant information, or as much of the relevant information, in one sheet, so that whenever they're applying for a grant, they don't need to go hunting for that information. This drastically reduces the time and the effort that comes into any time that anyone's applying for a specific grant, because they've got it all in one spot, and they can go through the grant application process in a far more efficient way.